So I want to remind you, we need farmers, okay? We need those people to produce the food we all consume. No farmers, no food. We need to make sure that they can do so while having the lowest impact on the environment. And that necessitates that we as society work with farmers to make their charge possible. And we oftentimes forget that, and that's why I'm making such a point of it.
If nutrient management is part of your operation, the Journal of Nutrient Management was built for you. Each issue delivers practical, real world insight on manure handling, storage, application, water quality, regulations, equipment, and sustainability strategies for today's dairy, beef, swine, and poultry operations. Whether you're looking to improve efficiency, stay ahead of environmental challenges, or learn from other producers and industry experts, the Journal of Nutrient Management keeps you informed with trusted, producer focused content. Best of all, qualifying producers can receive a free subscription. Go to jofnm.com and get your free subscription today.
Welcome back to the Hoard's Dairyman podcast. Today we have guest Frank Mitloehner from UC Davis. He is a professor and air quality specialist. So thanks for being on today, Frank.
I'm excited to be with you.
So excited to have you here. And for those who don't really know your background, can you just start by giving us a little bit of information about that, how you got to UC Davis, kind of the whole shebang?
Yeah, I'm a native from Germany, lived there for the first half of my life, studied agriculture engineering and animal science in Germany at Leipzig University, did my master's there, and then I went to Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas, where I did my PhD. That was followed by a short postdoc. And then a quarter century ago, I came to UC Davis and became a professor and air quality specialist here. I study the impact of animal agriculture on the environment, particularly the air environment and on climate. I'm also the director of the CLEAR Center, which is a sustainability center that does both research and communications around sustainability in animal agriculture. And on day 3 now, I'm the department chair of animal science here at UC Davis.
Wow, congratulations. I just read that a couple days ago. That's quite an honor.
Yeah, I have to figure out whether that's good or bad, but it's new.
Time will tell. Well, it sounds like you got a lot going on. Were you always interested in air quality type of research, or how did you even get involved in that?
You know, I was always interested in the relationship and the interrelationship of animals in their environment. And originally, it was more how are animals impacted by the environment? Heat stress, cold stress, exposures to particles in the air or flies and so forth. So it was more the impact of the environment on animals that brought me to what we call livestock ecology. And then later I found out that under particular production circumstances, livestock might also have significant impact on the environment. Let's say generating dust or odors or flies or other issues like greenhouse gases. And that has become a really hot topic. And so I've been in this area ever since.
So, how does methane from dairy cattle differ from carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so methane is really a different beast when it comes to greenhouse gases. It's potent, meaning it's heat trapping and more so than CO2. And that means when a methane molecule gets hit by a solar beam, it heats up and it traps the heat, and approximately 30 times more so than one molecule of CO2. So it's a potent greenhouse gas. What's also very interesting and important is that methane has a short lifespan. There's something else in the atmosphere that kills methane. It's a radical, a hydroxyl radical. So it's another molecule that destroys methane, and that takes on average about a decade. The same is not true for other greenhouse gases like CO2 or nitrous oxide, but it is for methane. So methane, in contrast to the other gases, is not just produced, but it's also destroyed. And that's an important distinction, because what it means is that if we can find ways to reduce methane, then we can destroy or get rid of more than is naturally produced. And that means we can reduce the gas in the atmosphere. And by doing so, we can reduce warming.
Wow, very interesting. So there's been some controversy between like politics and the whole methane carbon emissions type thing. Um, from the producer side, what do you wish the public understood about methane emissions from cattle or any livestock for that matter?
I would say methane currently is the Achilles heel of animal agriculture. Okay, so when the discussion turns into the impact livestock has on climate, it's really all about methane. And the subtleties around methane are not understood. And I don't expect the public to understand all the details around it. That would be asking too much, quite frankly. But I would ask them to listen to the experts who are quite clear about why methane is so different. If we ignore methane, if we say, nah, we don't believe in climate change and nah, I'm not doing anything on the greenhouse gases from my operation, and there are other sources that are much worse than I am. If we stick our head in the sand, so to say, then methane becomes a major challenge. And we shouldn't do that. If we, however, manage methane, then we can very much benefit from that. How so? Methane is really energy, okay? Of the energy that we feed to a cow, approximately 10% gets lost as methane. She just belches that out, and therefore it gets lost. And that's a net energy loss that that we don't like to see, but that's just something that does happen because of the microbes in the rumen converting feeds, many of those that cannot be digested by others, containing, let's say, cellulose. And when they do that, when they digest those feedstuffs, they produce, as an unintended consequence, methane. Methane also stems from animal manure. When animal manure decomposes, methane gas is produced. And normally that just goes into the air, and then it is a greenhouse gas contributing to global warming. However, it doesn't have to be that way. For example, we can trap that gas by putting a top or a cover of sorts over the manure storage. And when doing so, we can capture that methane. I already said methane is energy. We can capture it, and you can actually burn it and make power from it or fuels for vehicles. And we're doing that here in California, so much so that we are close to reducing 40% of methane for zero in the next few years. And that is internationally unique.
Considering it's such a complex topic, how are you getting producers to understand the benefits and how they can trap the methane and use it to their advantage and for the public's advantage? How are you kind of getting that message out there?
So the best way of communicating that is by showing them farms where that's already being done. What speaks to producers in particular is if you take something that was a liability before and now becomes an asset, even a financial asset. So, for example, if a dairy installs a digester and the dairyman learns that within a few years he'll break even and then have a new income stream, that's a winning argument, obviously. So that you take something that was a problem before, it now becomes part of a solution of sorts, not just with respect to lowering our impact on climate, but also improving your pocketbook. Now, many of those solutions are not easily implemented, and we are learning to find ways to optimize it. In 2 weeks, we have a State of the Science Summit here at UC Davis, where we have 300 or so international experts and audiences from all walks of life coming to Davis and sharing information on how we best address the issue of methane to make it an effective process, one that reduces this gas and reduces our impact on climate, but also one that is an incentive to producers, a financial incentive to producers.
There's a lot of benefits to kind of learning more about this process. And you had mentioned a bonus in their pocketbook. I get asked a lot about carbon credits. How does that tie in to this whole ordeal?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in the carbon credit situation, and the markets are developing as we speak. But what this speaks to in general is that localities and industries and companies have carbon targets. And in many cases, if they want to reduce their carbon footprint, they need to work with their supply chains. and here with the major players within the supply chains that produce greenhouse gases. Let's say if you sell meat or milk in a supermarket that you own and you want to reduce the carbon footprint of your supermarket, then you need to look at all the products that produce greenhouse gases. And within the food sector, livestock, in particular ruminant products, are the major sources of emissions from these food items. And so, if that supermarket, let's say a Walmart or so, wants to reduce their carbon footprint, then they need to work with what's called Scope 3 emission sources. And Scope 3 emission sources are those that are not directly related to their supermarket, but to the supply chain that supplies them with the product. So if let's say a Walmart wants to reduce its carbon footprint, then they need to work with the dairies and beef operations that supply them with food, with goods, because if these farmers reduce emissions on their premises, then that reduces the emissions of the product that the Walmart sells. So that's how that works. That is Starbucks, a Walmart, a McDonald's, and so on, work with farming communities in order to reduce emissions because it benefits not just the farm, also that supermarket or other vendor. So over time, the carbon markets will mature. Right now, they're not matured, and there will be a price for the reduction of carbon, and somebody will benefit from it. And we have to make sure that that somebody is not just everybody but the farmer. And this is why farmers need to wake up to this topic, because this topic is happening. It's not going away. It doesn't matter who is in the administration in the White House, because these topics will not go away because they are broader and larger.
What other ways have you seen in the field of producers trying to reduce the amounts of methane? I know there have been some feed products that have come out. What other types of
Mhm.
things are happening?
So the one thing I want to say as just early on here is, while we study methane and other issues in depth, we should not be too myopic on just one thing, okay? Too carbon myopic. Um, because we can reduce methane, even do so effectively, but then something else might pop up. Some other pollutant might pop up. For example, you can reduce methane and induce another greenhouse gas called nitrous oxide. Or you can reduce methane and generate a water pollutant like nitrates that leach into the groundwater. We don't want to be too myopic, and what I mean by that is we need to keep an eye out on unintended consequences. Okay, so when we study reduction of methane, we have to keep an eye also on other pollutants as well as sustainability considerations such as animal welfare. Okay, we don't want to make a change to a farm that negatively affects the welfare of cows or sheep or pigs or whatever we have. So we need to think holistically in areas. You asked about what the different avenues are for methane reduction. We already mentioned feed additives. So there are feed additives that we know are effective to reduce up to 30% of methane gas from especially ruminant livestock. There are manure technologies that can either trap that gas and prevent it from going into the air, or that can actively reduce the microbial processes in the manure pit or in the lagoon. So that might work and does work. Then it's also interesting to note that methane is a heritable trait, meaning the mama cow passes that trait on to the next generation. And in the future, there will be ways of identifying whether an animal is a high or low methane producing animal. And then that animal can or cannot, shall or shall not, be used for breeding purposes. There are voices that feel that 30%, 30% of methane can be reduced herd wide by selecting for low methane animals without it negatively impacting performance. So that's a breeding approach. The New Zealanders are working on vaccinations, on a methane vaccine. So you vaccinate those animals once a year or twice, and thereby then reduce enteric methane. So there are different approaches, as you can see.
Wow. So certainly a lot of variety when it comes to reducing the emissions and I think it's important that you mentioned we need to not be so laser focused and kind of improve one thing and then have unintended consequences. We can reduce methane emissions and improve sustainability, but also improve profitability at the same time. Is that true?
It is absolutely true. There are co-benefits from reducing methane because the loss of methane is a decrease in efficiency in general. Okay, so methane is nothing other than energy. If you heat your home with gas or if you cook your meals with a gas range, then what you're using there, the gas you're using is called natural gas, and natural gas is another word for methane. So methane is energy. Methane is flammable. Methane can be used to heat your home, cook your meal, or run a vehicle. In California, a lot of the methane that's collected from dairy digesters, from these so-called covered lagoons, a lot of that methane is going through underground pipelines into fueling stations, fueling heavy-duty trucks and buses. And that's done at such scale already that we have reduced a sizable amount of methane in the state. So if you think about all of California's dairies need to reduce approximately 7 million metric tons of methane, 7 million metric tons. This one technology of using anaerobic digesters alone will reduce 4 million metric tons. So 7 million is the total goal. Digesters alone will do 4 of the 7 million. In addition to that, we'll have feed additives. We will have improved efficiencies. Our cows become more and more efficient year by year. And by doing so, we need relatively fewer animals to produce a given amount of milk. That slight reduction of cow numbers, also called attrition, also leads to reductions of methane. We see approximately 0.5%, so half a percent, of the dairy herd decreasing year by year, largely a result of increasing efficiencies. And that reduction of cow numbers leads to reduction of methane as well. So feed additives, dairy digesters, better efficiencies, all of that contributes to a reduction of methane. By the year 2030, we will have reduced at least 7.6 million metric tons. And I want to remind you, the goal from the state is that our cows reduce, our dairies reduce 7 million metric tons. To be precise, 7.2 million metric tons. We will overachieve that goal and become a world champion as a result because nobody else has achieved these kind of reductions.
That's an incredible goal to achieve. What do you think was the big driver to get these numbers down?
Well, we have not just some recommendations or so, but we have a law in California that mandates a reduction of methane. The law is called SB 1383. It mandates a 40% reduction, 40% reduction of methane to be achieved by the year 2030, below 2013 baselines. And what's really noteworthy here is that the state used a different approach from what they normally use. Normally, they use what I call the Kane approach: rules and regulations, fines or taxes. You must reduce emissions. If you don't, we penalize you. That's the normal approach anywhere you want in the world. California decided to use a different approach for methane, namely not the Kane approach, but the carrot approach of financially incentivizing the use of technologies to reduce methane. Much like they would incentivize you or me to buy an electric car to reduce emissions, they give us a tax credit, or putting solar panels on your roof in order to use less fossil power but more solar power. Much like they incentivize that in private citizens, they've done the same with our dairies, saying if you produce biogas using a digester, then you will get so-called low carbon fuel standard credits or other credits. And these credits help making these things pay and generate a continuous income. This carrot approach is a very important departure from what they used originally, the Kane approach. And it's also a significant difference from what we see being done in the rest of the world, where governments do use the Kane approach, and where farmers, as a result, go to the streets of their capitals with thousands of tractors protesting in the Netherlands, in Ireland, in Germany, all over the world, regulations and legislation that they feel is overboarding. So I want to remind you, we need farmers, okay? We need those people to produce the food we all consume. No farmers, no food. We need to make sure that they can do so while having the lowest impact on the environment. And that necessitates that we as society work with farmers to make their charge possible. And we oftentimes forget that, and that's why I'm making such a point of it. We do oftentimes forget that if we make their lives impossible through overboarding regulations and so on, they will just simply say, you know what, I'm out of this. I will no longer partake in producing food. And then we're all in trouble.
For sure, and that's a scary thought that none of us probably want to think about. You were mentioning that this methane that we are locking up and it's powering other things. But so often I hear the public saying that, oh, if we got rid of dairy, that would solve all of our problems, significantly reducing climate change. What would you say to someone who is battling with that thought?
So there's no doubt that food production, like any other human activity, will contribute to greenhouse gas emissions and to a warming planet. And when I say food production, within food production, ruminant livestock production in particular is a main contributor of the food contributing sectors. But if we discuss the impact of animal agriculture on climate, then we should use data that pertain to our place here, the United States. In the United States, of all greenhouse gases that are produced in total by all sources, the livestock sector contributes a total of 4% of all greenhouse gases. 4%. The fossil fuel sector, so cars, trucks, trains, planes, ships, factories, and so on, produce about two-thirds of all greenhouse gases. The livestock sector, 4%. Within the livestock sector, the dairy sector alone will contribute approximately 1.5% of total greenhouse gases in the United States. But it produces a type of food that's extremely nutrient dense, very nutritious, and very delicious. And when I say very delicious, I'm emphasizing that because we oftentimes oversee the fact that people don't just make their food buying decisions based on, well, I wonder what the lowest carbon footprint food items is that or are that I can buy today. That's normally not what people make their food buying decisions based on. But they go into the supermarket and they make those decisions based on preference, based on, so that's taste, based on brand, based on price, some of them based on nutrition. And the question is, how do we satisfy those demands that the public has on the food sector with having the lowest environmental footprint? We can do it, and we have shown that we can. We can produce food with a minimized environmental footprint. On the dairy side, here in California, it takes us another few years, and we will lower methane so much that our dairy sector will not contribute to additional warming. No more additional warming. Let me explain that really quickly. Because methane is not just produced but also destroyed, naturally destroyed, if we, in addition to this natural destruction, lower methane, then we can get to a situation where we produce less methane than is naturally destroyed. If we reduce methane by 0.3% per year, I repeat that because it's so important. If we reduce methane by 0.3% per year, then we will not generate any additional warming with the sector. If we reduce methane by more than 0.3%, then we reduce warming. And this reduction, this annual reduction, is very possible. I've seen it many times, and I think our entire sector will achieve it within the very near future. And that will mean not just will we produce a food item that's very nutritious and delicious, but also one that lowers overall warming. Our cows, by producing methane, will still produce warming, but not additional warming. We will not drive our temperature rise, but we will halt it from this sector. Okay. Anytime you burn fossil fuel, with a car, truck, train, plane, and so on. Every time you do that, you add additional warming because the CO2 that results has a lifespan of 1,000 years. And that's why all of these activities drive warming. But on methane, it's different because of its short lifespan. If we slightly reduce this gas, we don't cause additional warming. If we strongly reduce this gas, we can reduce warming by a lot.
So we will be holding steady, is what you're saying.
If we reduce in a minor way, we're holding steady. If we reduce in a major way, like we do in California, then we will reduce the warming from our sector significantly.
Wow. That's incredible. Do you think other states will follow in suit of what you guys are doing over there on the West Coast?
Last year I visited 26 different countries, not just states in the United States, but different countries. And the reason why I did was because governments in these countries wanted to know what works in California that helps to reduce this gas measurably. It's certified. There's no argument over it that we reduce it that way without upsetting our farmers, but with the buy-in of our farmers. To those governments, I have to say, use the carrot, don't use the cane. Work with farmers and not against them. If you want to make meaningful changes, then you need to work with the actors in play and not against them. Every parent understands that. Okay, if you have kids, you understand what works much better, the carrot or the stick. I don't mean stick in a hitting over the head way, but it is really important that we pay respect to the sector that feeds us. I give you a very quick statistics, okay, because I think it's very meaningful. It comes from the latest agricultural census. And that census said that we have 2 million farmers, total farmers in the United States. Of the 2 million farmers, 1.5 million have an annual revenue of less than $25,000. So they cannot feed their family just with their farming income. Of those farmers that we have, 80,000 produce two-thirds of all the food we all consume. Only 80,000 produce two-thirds of all the food we all consume. And what is the average age of those 80,000 farmers? 59. They are this close to retirement age. And they will ask themselves, as of right now, what do I do in the future? Do I want to carry on? Do I want to pass it on to the next generation? Or do I get the heck out? And if they decide to go the latter route, we're all in trouble because that is a direct impact on our food security. We need to work with farmers to incentivize them to love what they do and what they do so well.
You definitely make a good point there. Those are honestly some startling statistics, especially with input costs and everything of that nature, becoming increasingly difficult to make a go of it. On the other hand, there are some environmental advocates that also like to voice their opinions, I would say. How can we work together with them from a producer side or just a person in the agriculture industry to form a common ground, I would say?
Yeah, I think you heard me loud and clear as saying we have an environmental footprint, we have environmental considerations to live up to. And we should be active. We should not stick our head in the sand, but we should grab that bull by the horns. Okay, I'm very clear about that. We should reduce greenhouse gases. We should affect water pollutants, air pollutants, and so on. That's what my whole career here at UC Davis has been all about. There are NGOs, non-government organizations, there are governmental agencies and so on that really have a common goal. And their common goal is let's minimize the environmental footprint of all the activities that we're involved in. And that includes animal agriculture. And they can be worked with. And I have found some of those relationships to be very fruitful. Then there are other people who raise voices and are critical of animal agriculture. And their goal is not to reduce emissions. Their goal is to reduce cows and get rid of them. And not just cows, but all of animal agriculture. They think the use of animals for any human purpose is unethical and should be avoided. With those guys, I have not found common ground because they're not willing to listen and they're not willing to understand that the vast majority of consumers will continue to consume animal source foods such as meat, dairy, eggs, and so forth. In fact, 98%, 98% of all refrigerators in this country right now contain animal source foods. So the question is not, shall we eat animal source foods or shall we not? People decide that with their pocketbooks, okay? They want animal source foods. The question is not, shall we produce it? The question is, how shall we produce it? And how do we work with farmers to get other societal desires that we have, improved animal welfare, low environmental footprint, blah, 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 those kind of things. How do we get them to the forefront? And how do we get farmers to take that very seriously? Because consumers demand it. And by the way, particularly the younger generation demands it. They oftentimes ask not just, what do I eat, but where does it come from? Where does it come from? How was that animal raised? Does that practice that the farmer used live up to my ethical considerations, my desires? Yes. And so it behooves us in animal agriculture to listen very carefully to those voices because they're your customers. If your customer says, I want something for whatever reason, and you don't listen, then that's a bad business case for you.
Yeah, definitely not going to be in business very long. I think it's just a willingness to adapt and to educate and, like you said, not stick our heads in the sand, but just be very aware and willing to learn about new practices and what's going on. Frank, you spend a lot of time at UC Davis, and I'm sure you've seen things definitely change across your timeline there. When I know it can be hard to even look 10 years ahead, but 5 to 10 years ahead, what are you most excited about in terms of the dairy farmer and what's on the horizon for those folks?
So first of all, I have to tell you, I'm totally bullish about the future of animal agriculture. Okay, 5 years ago, I wasn't so optimistic because 5 years ago there was incredible pressure from all sides. All kinds of activists and plant-based alternative companies and governments and so on exerted immense pressures on animal agriculture. We are in a different situation today. We are in a different situation today. Protein is center stage in people's nutrition. People want more protein. People understand that animal source foods are very nutrient dense. It's not just more or better protein, but there's also this whole other package of nutrients associated with it, essential macro, micronutrients, vitamins, and so on and so on. So the demand is there. The demand is even increasing. Farmers are able to satisfy demand, increase performance, production, and so forth. So all of that is good. Farmers are willing to learn and improve where they need to. So that's all very positive, in my opinion. Okay. So the markets are good. People's awareness is more aligned with what's possible, and I now mean consumers, but also producers. And producers are more willing to learn. I see less of this combative mindset of let's go out and fight back, and but instead let's educate people. Okay, let's tell them how we do business. Last night I was given a great award on a ranch nearby, on a beef ranch, and there were hundreds of ranchers, and we sat there in this incredible environment in the foothills of the Berryessa Mountains, and we looked at the land use, and I thought, man, I wish I could capture this image of these people, how they care for their land, how they understand the ecosystem, how it works, from soil microbes to soil nutrients to forages that grow there to animals feeding those forages with given grazing pressures, the interaction with weather and climate. These people understand that plot of land that they manage in ways nobody else ever would. Nobody else ever would. And the problem is that oftentimes they shy away from talking to the public or even opening their farm to the public. And I think that's a problem because they actually have a lot of authority if they were to be willing to to speak more, speak up more, show what they do more. I think farmers need to understand that that's part of their responsibility. It's not just mine. In fact, I'm a professor at a university. My job is not the job that I do when I talk about animal agriculture the way I do, but it's my passion. And I think you all have that passion and show it. Don't be the best kept secret on the planet, okay? That doesn't behoove you. Be proud, humble, but proud.
Certainly some good advice there, Frank. Well, we're going to wrap up today, but thank you for all the insights today, Frank. I really learned a lot, and hopefully whoever's listening learns a lot as well, because that was kind of a foreign topic for me a couple years ago, and I'm slowly learning more. So thanks, Frank. I really appreciate you being on today.
You are very welcome. Thanks to Hoard's Dairyman, and thanks to you, Jenna.
Thank you.
If nutrient management is part of your operation, the Journal of Nutrient Management was built for you. Each issue delivers practical, real-world insight on manure handling, storage, application, water quality, regulations, equipment, and sustainability strategies for today's dairy, beef, swine, and poultry operations. Whether you're looking to improve efficiency, stay ahead of environmental challenges, or learn from other producers and industry experts, the Journal of Nutrient Management keeps you informed with trusted, producer-focused content. Best of all, qualifying producers can receive a free subscription. Go to jofnm.com and get your free subscription today.